Good afternoon, fellow teaching artists. Welcome, welcome to our conversation. It's called Thriving as an Equitable and Inclusive Teaching Artist in Los Angeles. And we are running this in conjunction with the National Teaching Artists Guild's conference called Our Shared Future. And my name is Valerie Dauphin. I will be your host and facilitator for today. Keela, can you get our slides going, please? Thank you.
Are you all seeing that?
I see it. Yes. Okay, awesome. All right, so once again, welcome. You are in the right place if you are here to talk about equity and inclusion as a teaching artist. Next slide, please. And as I just shared momentarily a little moment ago, this is in conjunction with the Teaching Artists Guild's conference, Our Shared Future. Next slide, please. Okay, a couple of housekeeping notes before we dive into the material. You might want to, we got a little baby, welcome, welcome. So you might want to keep a notebook and pen handy because will be a lot of information, a lot of ideas that will be shared, and just have it handy so you can jot them down. Take breaks as you need to. Bathroom, water, we're not going to have an official break. We're going to go the full 90 minutes. We start at 3 and we end at 4:30 Pacific Daylight Time. You're also welcome to rename yourself if you'd like with your name, your teaching artist discipline. I know I'm curious to see the various disciplines that we've got represented in the room today. And you can also, if you'd like, put your gender pronoun and which city you're calling in within Los Angeles. And there's an example on the screen right there. Next, this is going to be a combination workshop and roundtable discussion. So I will share some things that I've learned on the various topics that we'll be covering today, and then you'll have ample opportunity to go into breakout rooms to discuss with your peers, and then we'll come back into the main room and do some whole group discussion, okay? For technical questions, actually, I'm going to do the last one and then come back to the technical questions. I want to say a special thank you to the LA County Arts Ed Collective, who's sponsoring this particular event, and a special shout out to 3 representatives from the LA Arts and Culture Arts Collective today. We've got Keela Postlethwaite Stinnett. She's going to be monitoring the chats and also helping with the breakout rooms. We also have Jillian McCarthy and also Megan Kirkpatrick, who will also be helping out with the chat monitoring. Thank you, the 3 of you, for being here today. And if you have technical questions, please shoot them to either Keela Postlethwaite or Megan Kirkpatrick, Keela Postlethwaite Stinnett or Megan Kirkpatrick, so they can help you with any of your technical questions. All right, let's continue. Next slide, please. So as we progress through this conversation, just keep these points in mind. There's going to be a lot of information shared, all right? There are going to be some portions where you might feel like you didn't have time to dive deeper than you wanted to. I just want to say that's okay, all right? Think of this as just the beginning or continuation of a conversation you'll have for the remainder of your teaching artist career. So don't feel like you missed out on something. Just know that everything is perfect and we're gonna talk about what we need to talk about, and it's all good. This is just the beginning. Next slide, please. So some guiding questions, right? We're teaching artists, so we know about designing lesson plans and curriculum. So our guiding questions for today are, how will you personally create a sustainable and enjoyable career as a teaching artist? And then in tandem with that, with all the initiatives that are, currently going on with race, equity, diversity, and inclusion, how do you make sure that your work, your contribution to the profession contributes to the solution of inclusivity and equity, and not the problem with upholding conscious and unconscious biases, racism, sexism, what have you, okay? Next slide, please. And then we have 4 specific goals. 1, you'll define what thriving looks like for you, not only in your career, but in your whole life. Then next up, you'll discover the values that drive your teaching artist practice. 3, you'll determine the role that you would like to play in using your teaching artist career to disrupt racism and to disrupt other inequities, while creating culturally responsive, culturally relevant, and inclusive spaces and curricula for the students and communities that you serve. And then our last goal is for you to leave here feeling a sense of empowerment to create work opportunities for yourselves that are artistically rewarding, personally gratifying, and financially satisfying. So we've got a jam-packed session today. Let's continue. So, once again, my name is Valerie Dauphin, and I am a certified life coach and author. The name of my business is called Feel Good Kick-Ass Coaching, and there's the book that I wrote on the right side of the screen. I'm also a dance teaching artist and company director, so I have parallel careers, the teaching artistry and the life coaching. And within my career as a teaching artist, I'm a dance company director for a school, and I've been a teaching artist at multiple organizations throughout Los Angeles. And I've also am a diversity, equity, and inclusion lead teacher and a strategic planning committee member for the organization which I work for. And so I am very, very passionate about equity, inclusivity, and the arts, and also mindset with the coaching. And then finally, I was also a fitness instructor. I used to be an LAUSD substitute teacher and also a tutor. So in terms of education, I've explored it on various sides. Next slide, please. And just a two quick slides so you can see me in action a little bit. There's me on the cover of a Richard Simmons fitness video about 10 years ago, and then some fitness modeling. Next slide, please. And then there's some of me doing the teaching artist work, and then also another dance fitness DVD I was part of. All right, let's dive into the materials. All right, I'm just curious. We can actually stop the slides for this portion so we have a full screen, we can see each other. So in the chat, I'd love to see, where we're at in terms of how long you've been a teaching artist and which discipline you practice. So if you'd like to, go ahead and write in the chat if how many years you've been a teacher. Actually, yeah, let's do it in the chat because not everybody's video is on. So let's see how long you folks have been teaching artists. Originally, I was going to do a poll, 0 to 5 years, 5 to 10, or 10 plus, but we don't need to do that. So we've got three months. Welcome, brand spanking new to the profession. We've got 5 years in writing. We've got art, yoga, meditation teacher since 1999. Another person been teaching theater since 2001, 14 years teaching multimedia, 9 years music. Yes, I love this waterfall. Keep it coming, right? This is a conversation, so we're also going to be utilizing the chat to connect with each other. So this is awesome. So we've got a spectrum of people here today. Okay. My next question was, if we can throw the next slide up so you can have a visual of what you'll be answering. The next question is, why are you here? Like, what inspired you to attend this session? And what are you hoping to gain or learn or contribute to today's conversation? So feel free to also populate the chat. We've got someone who said they're new to LA, and Francoise, welcome. So even if you don't end up writing anything in the chat, just to take a moment to reflect on what inspired you to be in this particular session today. We've got Nara, who said she wants to make sure they're supporting Ola's teaching artists the best that they can. Holly's, I'm here because I support teaching artists and currently also work directly with youth. Just want to see how I can expand in Derek and develop, says Darren. And Julie, post-pandemic challenge, getting back to work. Okay, all right, keep them coming, keep them coming. Thank you for sharing. We've got Gustavo, who said to learn new approaches and connect with colleagues in the field. Yes, beautiful. Yeah. All right, next slide, please. Just be mindful to watch your mute status. Please stay muted. There will be designated portions for discussion. Otherwise, one of us can also manually mute you. So, all right, we're gonna dive into goals 1 and 2, which is define thriving and discover the values for your teaching artist practice. Next slide, please. Okay, so in my life coaching business, I have facilitated, during the pandemic, I facilitated a couple of conversations and workshops for organizations called how to, become a thriving machine during quarantine. And so this is some of the information that I shared there that I'm also sharing here with you today. So a couple of definitions for thriving, right? Why thriving? Thriving is one of those words that it brings this sense of liveliness, this aliveness, right? We're artists. We know about being passionate, right? So we can be passionate in our actual disciplines, but also we can extend that through the rest of our lives. So let's look at our teaching artist career through the lens of thriving, and also how it gels and how it flows with the rest of our lives, right? So a couple of synonyms, definitions: to grow vigorously, to flourish, to prosper, to luxuriate, bloom, and flower. Next slide, please. So now we're going to dive into a little bit of a writing prompt. I'll set a timer for 3 minutes and I'll give you a 1-minute warning. How do you experience or define thriving? And try to think beyond material possessions. Include the most important areas of your life. So for me, thriving is about this sense of, I used the word before, aliveness. So what is having me feel alive? Well, it's important for me to feel connected to my purpose, and my purpose actually goes beyond my teaching artist career. These are just certain, ways in which I conduct my life. And so in terms of that aliveness, what am I doing that brings me aliveness? Going on regular walks, having my workouts, making sure I have healthy and safe people within my immediate circle. In terms of my career, thriving looks like working at places that are committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, things like that. So I just shared a little bit about, how there's more to it, but I'm just sharing you a snapshot of what thriving looks like for me. And one last bit, you can have a special focus on your career, since we are teaching artists, and that is, the discussion for today. But I also invite you to think about how your TA career coincides with all of your life, all right? So we'll take a couple of minutes. I'm setting the timer now, and feel free to write in your journals. You're welcome to reflect in the chat or just think to yourselves. And starting now, I'll give you a 1-minute warning.
As this blue color, Christine Rewer is a
1 minute remaining. And time. It's okay if you didn't finish. You can always come back to this later, but just to get your mind thinking about the topic of thriving in your life and your career. Next slide, please. Okay, so for this one, you can do just a mental, a visual reflection, writing, but just to take a moment and to connect with why you are a teaching artist. Not why you're an artist. Why are you a teaching artist? Okay. So a couple of things to consider. Are you doing it to make extra money while you work on your performing career? Is it your parallel career? Is it your full-time endeavor? So just take a few moments. I'm not going to set a timer for this, but just to reflect. And if you'd like to, you're welcome to jot your reflection down in the chat as well. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, values. Values are the fuel. They are the motivators, the inspiration. They're your North Star. They're your guiding principles and standards of behavior. So one of my core values is freedom. So how am I experiencing a sense of freedom through my practice, through my business, through my career, in my personal life, right? But particular, since we're, specific to the teaching artist, the teaching artist, your teaching artist profession, your teaching artist career, my values actually for my teaching artist career, one of them is equity. One of them is equity. Another one is expression. And so take a few moments. You don't have to circle your top 5. That was in the source that I got this particular little graphic from. But just to take a moment to consider, what are your top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 core values? And these are just some on the list. There are others too. Just take a moment to consider that and maybe write them down too. Next slide, please. Okay, we're going to move into breakout rooms now and have some discussion. You're welcome to share your journal writings on thriving, share why you're a teaching artist, share your values, but essentially the three mini exercises that we just did, I invite you to share about them in your breakout group. We're going to be 3 to 4 people in each group. And what was the one more thing I was going to say? Oh, yes. And we're going to have about 1 or 2 more breakout sessions for this conversation. And so you'll be with the same people for the entirety of this session. Okay. Next slide, please. Just a few guidelines around breakout rooms. So confidentiality is key. There's this thing called share the learnings, but leave the specifics. Okay. So we're going to have an opportunity to share as a collective, to share as a whole group after your breakout rooms. If there's something that someone said that moved you or inspired you, don't say their name, don't talk about the specifics, but rather talk about how the impact on you and how you are absorbing this information and how it's percolating for you and how you can see or use it to apply in your own teaching artist career. Another one, if you'd like to, this is just a suggestion, but you don't have to do it. You can do more of a free flow conversation, or if you're a little bit more, you like to have some specific guidelines, shoot for about 2 minutes per person to share. We're going to have a total of 8 minutes in the breakout room, where we're going to give you a 1 minute warning to come back, or 1 minute gentle reminder to come back, and then we'll bring you back in at the 8 minute mark. Number 3, also suggestion, practice courage. Number 1 is actually not a suggestion. Confidentiality is, let's keep it confidential, right? What the specifics of what is shared in your room. But 2 and 3, these are also suggestions. Practice courage, sharing what feels uncomfortable, if you're up for that challenge. And then number 4, be mindful of how much space you take up. If you're one who tends to be a little bit more reserved in the background, maybe try leaning in a bit more and using your voice, right? And if you're someone who's boisterous and is comfortable talking a lot, see if you can invite room for other people to also take up space, okay? We can open the breakout rooms. Let me see if there's anything else. No, we are good. We are good. So we can stop the screen share and start the breakout rooms.
Okay. There we go. Yeah, everyone basically got sent.
Welcome back, welcome back. Give time for the rest of the folks and those delicious conversations to come back in. Oops. All right, welcome back. So you had time for breakout room discussion. Let's have some whole group conversation now, our first actual conversation. So for the next few minutes, just want to hear, get some voices in the room. Feel free to raise your hand or just unmute and start talking. Share what came up for you around doing these 3 exercises. Anything you'd like to share about your values in relation to your teaching artist practice, how you define thriving or how you see yourself thriving, and what was the third bit? Yeah, values and thriving. So the floor is open. Who'd like to share? You're also welcome to type in the chat. Let's get some voices in the space, please.
Well, I'll share something. I'm not sure what, but I'll be a voice.
Yes.
I love my group. I love the people I was talking with. I know we're not supposed to talk, but I resonate with everything that was shared and said in our group. I love the component of joy. And for me, I forgot to bring forth the values. I love authenticity, creativity, compassion, and then you switch slides so I couldn't finish. But I'm sure there were many more. Anyway, thank you.
No, thank you, Anne-Françoise. And actually, I'm going to drop the link to where I got that core values list. I just dropped it in the chat for everyone. So thank you for
Thank
sharing on Francoise. Teresa Bernadette, please share with us.
Hi. Yes, I shared that I define thriving as living sustainably in like ways that not only environmentally, but also like something that allows me to contribute to a greater good, and also allows me to, gives me the resources that I need to continue doing like creative and activist work.
Thank you for sharing, Teresa. Anybody, Teresa or Teresa? How do you prefer to pronounce her name?
Teresa.
Teresa, thank you. Who else? Who else would like to share with us? Not mandatory, but it makes it more fun, hence the conversation component of our event. Going once, twice. Yes, Holly, go for it.
Thank you. First, I just want to thank you for this moment, just that moment of kind of connecting to what does it mean for me to thrive, to really think through these 3 prompts that you gave us felt like diving into a little oasis in and of itself. Just this moment. What would we do? Wonderful. I had the pleasure of meeting 2 gentlemen that I have not met before in the ecosystem, and that was wonderful too. So I will just, in this space of being brave, I will say that my current position involves supporting teaching artists, and I work directly with youth as well, but only recently has my work incorporated my personal artistry as a theater person. I did that for many years, and now that's being incorporated into my job. I am loving it. It's reminding me of the essentials of why I live. And at the same time, this opportunity is helping me really continue to think about how to remain relevant, sensitive, wise, as a middle-aged white woman who's working for an organization that's predominantly serving Black and Brown youth. I'm constantly looking for ways to develop that expanded awareness that is essential to my work. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you for sharing with us so thoroughly. Much appreciation. All right. We have time for one more quick one. Otherwise, we can continue on to our next section. I'll just leave the space for, oh, yes, we've got it, Maya.
I'll be quick. I think this made, like, these exercises, it just made me think of, and I shared this in my group, just like the words like generative and generosity. And that was actually my answer to like thriving. And then I was like, oh, that's actually shifts really well to my values, just like creating generative, generous experiences.
Thank you, Maya, for sharing. Thank you, everyone, for sharing, and also everyone for holding space. You know, even if we're not speaking, we're holding space by offering attention for those who do share. So thank you all for your presence and your contribution and your participation. So section 1 was around connecting, with your heart, right? Connecting with your heart, with your mind. Establishing that your own personal why, right? In 30 minutes. The next section, we're going to dive into how to use our practice to disrupt inequities, to disrupt racism, and to promote inclusivity. So next slide, please. All right, so actually, let's go back one, because not everybody was here in the beginning. Just a reminder, it's okay if you feel like, there's more I want to say. This is just scratching the surface, this conversation. It's meant to get your juices flowing, right? To make the connections with the people in this space, right? And then to continue this conversation outside of this particular setting. And also remember to get contact info for people that you connect with today. And towards the end, we'll use the chat for anyone who wants to put their contact information in there. And then, so you can create your own community that continues outside of today. All right, next slide. So our third goal, determining the role you want to play and using your teaching artist career to disrupt the isms. Next slide, please. That's just another way of saying the same thing. Next slide. Okay, there are a lot of terms on this slide that you might have seen. You might not have seen. And each one means something slightly different. Each one, they're all interconnected. And I put these words on this slide because, at first it can be, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. I need to stay on top of all of this. How am I going to stay on top of all of this? Oh my gosh, I should get into this training, into that training, into that training. So this might happen, right? You might be experiencing this right now. Maybe you're not, but even just this desire I want to have a handle on all of this. I'm here to tell you at this point, don't worry about all of the terms. Instead, let's simplify it into one graphic. Next slide, please. Because this is what it's about. This right here. So just take a few moments to read. Oh, actually, no, we're gonna read this together. So I'm gonna call on a name that I see as someone who's looking at the screen. Dan Fultz, will you please read reality on the far left?
Reality, one gets more than is needed, while the other gets less than is needed. Thus, a huge disparity is created.
Thank you, Dan. Next, how about Heather Furchow? Will you please read equality?
Furco, but that's okay. No one can ever pronounce it right. The assumption is that everyone benefits from the same supports. This is considered to be equal treatment.
Mm-hmm. So thank you, Heather Furchow. Did I say it right that time? Furco. Oh, I'm so sorry. Furco, Heather Furco, yes. All right, so equality. As you can see, equality doesn't work. Equality does not work because not everybody's starting from the same position. Next one, equity. Let us go to, let me expand my screen. How about Raul M? Will you please read equity?
Everyone gets the support they need, which produce equity.
Yes, this is what it's about right here. The little person on the right needs 2 blocks. The person in the middle needs 1. The person on the left, not so much. So how do we ensure that every student, every class that we teach, everyone's getting the supports that they need? And it's not about being equal because not everybody's starting at the same place. Next one, justice. How about Rebecca H? Will you please read justice?
Yeah, hi everyone. Justice. All 3 can see the game without supports or accommodations because the causes of the inequity were addressed. The systemic barrier has been removed.
Thank you. Thank you so much for reading. This is the space where a lot of us are doing our work. My organization, is working on towards justice right now with the 5-year strategic planning committee. I work at a school, and I'm part of the brain trust that is rolling out a 5-year plan to embed various aspects of curriculum, of school culture, of staff policies and procedures to address, so to make sure that each component is embedded with the principles of equity, of justice, of inclusion. Okay, we're not fully there yet, but it is happening. And then the last one. Okay, so the first four, the reality, equality, equity, and justice. You might have seen these graphics over the last several years. They've been around. Sometimes there's, they switch the words around. Justice can be seen as something else. But this last slide, the inclusion piece, I had never seen that before. So that's why I included it here. And it was created by a clinical psychologist by the name of Dr. David Murphy. And you can find him on Twitter. He's very active on Twitter. And he found himself frustrated with the different graphics that he saw, because the three people on in the pictures were always on the outside. They were always still just watching the game. So he created a graphic where everybody's playing in the game. And I found this very inspiring for me. So that's why I'm sharing it here. And then let's have one more person read. How about Kellen Law? Will you please read inclusion?
Sure. Inclusion. Everyone is included in the game. No one is left on the outside. We didn't only remove the barriers keeping people out, we made sure that they were valued and involved.
Thank you, Kellen. Okay. Let's see, do we have a slide? Yes, next slide, please. So as we reflect on those four graphics that we just, the cartoons that we just saw, I really would love for you to, or I invite you to really deeply consider this. Don't underestimate the power and influence you have to affect change towards justice and inclusion in your role as a teaching artist, okay? By power, I don't mean domination. That's something different, okay? But power, we each have individual power. We each have personal responsibility. And when we, thank you, Chris, I see your message, thank you. So it's like when we take ownership of that, we can actually stop the slides so you can see, so I can see everybody and everybody can see me. So I'm gonna share what it looked like for me. So I've been teaching at the organization that I've been at for almost 5 years. And before that, I was a teaching artist in various other organizations. I've gotten around quite a bit in LA. And at one point in my career, it was about, I just need to work. I just need to work. I was working on other aspects of my career. I was working on, some coaching stuff, teaching dance, etc. But within the teaching artist space, there's this tendency, that a lot of us have, including myself formerly, where it was like, I just go in, do my thing, teach my art, and then I'm out, okay? But as I progressed, particularly in the organization that I'm at now, there were opportunities that opened, in light of everything that went down, the three big murders that happened in the United States in 2020, where staff at my organization, we got together after hours, we were just talking about like, how are we processing all of this? Okay, so, personally, and how can we support each other? And then that work expanded to official positions for DEI. We created official committees, which I am part of, and the lead DEI teacher. And so in terms of my practice, what it looks like is within the arts department at my school. It is a K through 8 school, but we also have a dance program, an arts program. So in meeting with my other dance teaching staff, personally, it was around, a few of us asked the question, why are modern and ballet considered the foundation? Why is that considered the standard? Especially with everything that I was learning, that we were all learning, We were bringing in articles from colleagues who were doing research and also practicing in the field. And so we were opening up our mind. Actually, I always had this question because I did not come from a classical, even the word classical training and how that tends to be viewed as this esteemable thing. But really, and in my research and discussions that I've had with other artists, it's actually glorifying Eurocentric ideals. But there's a whole lot of other world that's outside of Europe. So it's questioning, what it looked like for the team that I work with as artists, questioning those norms and standards that are considered as, it's just part of the profession. It's just the foundation. But actually looking at that, deconstructing it, especially since the school that I work at is like 95% brown kids. And we were doing staff surveys, and repeatedly the students were saying they're not seeing themselves. They're not seeing themselves in the arts. It also looked like, with our music teacher was bringing in actually the classical music. I forget the wording that she said, but it was something as, it's actually a more Western European idealized something for music. There are other music. There's other music language that's outside of the 5, 6, 7, 8 count system. Okay, so it's like expanding awareness, expanding our options, and then implementing. So the implementation looked like I created a curriculum. I co-created it. Well, I was teaching with another teacher. That teacher left, and so for the last 2 school years, I created a curriculum and been teaching an African diaspora dance class at my organization. That's what it looked like for me, to take ownership of this and to not just teach my practice, but to see how can I truly serve the communities that I'm in? How can I actually show what's possible in the arts instead of just regurgitating some norms or standards that were created with a certain ideology that was not about including everyone, okay? So that's my personal story with that. So now I'm gonna do this next bit in reverse. We're gonna do a whole group discussion now. We'll definitely be monitoring the chats as well. You're more than welcome if you do not feel comfortable sharing your voice, but you feel comfortable writing it, please write it down. And then, we'll also look in the chat. And also, if there's something that you want to share that you do want to be voiced, but you don't, but you would prefer it to be anonymous, you're welcome to just send a message to me or to any of our other co-hosts, Jillian McCarthy, Megan Kirkpatrick, and Keela Postlethwaite-Stinnett, and we'll be more than happy to share it on a group level, but keep it anonymous. So we've got multiple options for sharing. So the question is, or this is a starting question, what questions do you personally have around this work? Or what's something that you've been grappling with around being an inclusive teacher, embodying your practice with being culturally responsive, sensitive, all of that. So what's percolating for you on this topic? Feel free to unmute and start speaking or raise your hand and we'll have you come on. But yeah, the floor is open. Let's have a whole group discussion around this. Let's see. Okay, we've got a couple people. I can't see them. For some reason, I can't see them. So oh yeah, there we go. I can see them now. Lauren, why don't you go? We'll go Lauren and then Raul.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I've never taught before. I used to dance pretty heavily in salsa dance, swing, and then other more classical Eurocentric types of dance, but I never felt confident enough to be a teacher myself. And also in this day and age, when it comes to inclusivity and DEI work, I don't feel like it's my place. to be teaching that. I feel like I need to be stepping back and listening more as opposed to trying to be a teacher in that realm, if that's fair to say.
Do you mind if I ask you some more questions?
Of course.
How does that feel for you? Or to not have a, to not be teaching, or to kind of be observing and listening more?
It's very humbling. Like in some respects, I want to try to start teaching as a way to expand on my skill set and like build the confidence, but also I still feel like I need to learn more in terms of all of the other stuff, like all the cultural aspects and the DEI aspects. So it's kind of like a tug of war between the two. It's very humbling. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing with us. All right. Raul, we'll go with you next.
Thank you, Valerie. I really would like to bring to the discussion the importance of the collective and the importance of your colleagues when you are working in different places, because, and from my own experience, since I started teaching in the early 90s, and because I was aware of racism and homophobia, I began to be inclusive in my teachings, and in many ways, I didn't get tenure the first time because my colleagues were opposed to the kind of syllabi that I was bringing into creating this type of inclusion. And I think it's really important to be aware for those people who at this very moment are interested in being inclusive, to really look around and look to their colleagues who are teachers of color and understand what they go through, because not everybody is aware that we live in a global culture where there is many and different expressions, and nobody who has to dominate over the other one, but to have a more cohesive and more current global cohesive kind of curriculum to really reach into the diversity of our students. But if we find our colleagues that are against what we are bringing into and the kind of positiveness that and knowledge that we bring to our students, then it creates a place of fear for us in many ways, and somehow it makes us to leave the institution, to not want to teach anymore, to don't trust our colleagues. And so it's very important to become aware in our place of work that we have to collaborate with everybody. But that's what I wanted to bring into the table.
Thank you for that, Raul. And you know, you touch on something that is key. You said the word collective. This is not a solo situation here. You know, it's not just Valerie she's the forerunner for the DEI stuff and she's gonna teach. No. I look to my colleagues. I look to my staff. Even as a person of color, like, I'm still having conversations, because guess what? There is also internalized racism. So what that is when people of color are projecting and proliferating biases and prejudices that they have towards their own people, pretty much playing out the systemic racism, those systemic isms. They've embodied that unconsciously, and then they're disseminating that through their practice. So that's also a thing, okay? And so I get to continually check myself, because I'm not just here, you know, I'm not here teaching y'all anything. I am a practitioner, and I'm just facilitating this conversation, but we are a community of teaching artists. So we get to bring other teaching artists, right, We get to talk to not just teaching artists, but talk to, if you're at a school, speak to the administration, speak to people in the different, in other departments. But the thing is, it's this community aspect. It's the community, that will help us heal, that will help the world heal. Thank you for that, Raul. We've got Anne-Françoise next.
Yeah, I agree about community communication and dialoguing, being seriously authentic. As a yoga and meditation teacher, I've lived in New York City for a long time and taught at the YMCA. So I had the privilege to meet all kinds of people, all age, all race. And I never saw skin color, age, sex, gender issues. And so now when I'm faced with issues coming to LA, I've realized, like I would be the minority among Asian people or Hispanic, and I can find myself being more anti-white and pro-Black and pro-Asian because I feel like white people, we have, look at our skin, look at the way, I think Black people age in an amazing way. So I'm wondering, but do I, as a white woman, not, I used to not teach prenatal and pregnant women, and I thought I couldn't teach because I never experienced being pregnant. And I'm wondering, could I understand, my idea is I see beyond color, right? Am I bypassing? Am I being in denial? Or am I just not understanding because my skin is white and I probably experienced white privilege, even though as a woman, I probably experienced other injustices, but so that's my question, is that, I would love for us to all be able to share hands and see beyond the skin, the color of our skin and our stories, because we're so much more than that. We're these amazing human beings with such potential. So I have a hard time seeing colors. And yeah, so I don't know if it's good or bad, but so it is. And my question is, can I really understand inclusivity, because I've never experienced what some of you have experienced for what you've shared. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne-Françoise, for being honest and vulnerable and sharing. I definitely have some thoughts, but since this is a conversation, I would love to hear from anyone who feels moved to speak to Anne-Françoise's question. Heather, go ahead.
I guess as I see color, maybe that's because I'm a person of color. I feel like my color informs and my experiences inform where I live in this world. I'm also a Black librarian, which doesn't happen a lot. And I've worked in communities where I was the only Black person, Asian communities, white communities, Hispanic communities. I feel like if you don't see people's colors, you don't really see them. And my husband is white, but he didn't grow up in America. He grew up in New Guinea. So he has a different perspective, although he's a white person. There's all of these little things that sort of add to who you are and how you live in society. And color is just one of them, but I don't think you should not see it.
No, I do see color. Okay, so maybe I didn't explain myself clearly. I just want to make sure that my message is not.
Maybe you don't.
I see your color, and I see the beauty in colors. Are you kidding? Okay. Colors is my thing. I love colors. Without color, there's no vibrancy. I love colors. I love all kinds of colors. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a skin color or color of the petal of a flower. Yeah. I love color, but I'm saying I'm not going to see you less than or more of.
Well, then, yeah, that's a different thing.
Although I admire Black people because you guys know how to dance, you know how to move, you know how to.
Well, that's not necessarily true. See, you shouldn't. First of all, no race is a monolith. No race is a monolith. Everybody's not the same. I studied opera. People, people ask me if I can rap. That doesn't necessarily happen. There are a lot of people there. I don't want to take over the conversation, but no race is monolithic. Everybody is very unique. They're very, I can't speak for the entirety of the Black race. I have my experience. I can speak for my experience. And that's all I'll say.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Anne-Françoise. Lauren, I saw your hand up. What would you like to contribute?
Oh boy. I was gonna say, I remember Trevor Noah said something really important, which was, if you don't see color, do you not see purple? Do you not see turquoise? It's not about acknowledging color. It's checking ourselves with the kind of stereotypes and presumptions and assumptions we've developed through the systemic upbringing of our lives to those colors that we see in people. So it's about checking that and not, as Heather said, just applying that as like a whole entire generalization of one type of a person.
Beautiful. I'm not even actually going to add anything because let's continue this discussion in the breakout rooms now. So we're going to go back to the same breakout rooms, and there are a few questions. You don't have to address all of them, but pick the one that that makes you go, yeah, that one. I want to dive and talk about that. So I just dropped them in the chat. And the first one, how does your current teaching artist practice enable exclusivity with and in the students and communities you serve? So it's like taking a look at how is your current practice promoting stereotypes and biases and proliferating a certain ideal as the right way, okay? Another question, what is a norm or standard in your discipline that you'd like to question? I shared what that looked like for me. Why ballet? Why modern? And then from there, that question, it sparked dialogue, and we've been creating some changes. Another question, how do you envision promoting inclusion in your teaching artist career? More specifically, what aspects of your teaching artist practice do you need to change? And then finally, what further support or resources do you need to help you move forward? So for this one, let's do 7 minutes for this discussion. So we'll give you a warning or a reminder at 6 minutes, and then everybody will come back at 7 minutes, okay? If you have any questions, please reach out to me or any of our other co-hosts, and we'll see you back in 8 minutes.
Hey, Heather, I just wanted to say we had a few people that had to drop off. So we have several groups that are now pairs. Would you like me to combine a couple of those pairs together so they have a larger group, or are people comfortable with 2 in a group? Or how would you like to do it, Valerie?
Are you cool? Who's okay with being paired up? Okay, we can go with the pairs.
Okay,
thank you.
Sounds good.
All right.
Send you all now. Let's see, as if I have one person by themselves.
Welcome, welcome back, welcome back. Okay, we have 12 minutes left, and we still have one more section to go. Jillian, will you please put on the final couple of slides? So how was that? How were your breakout rooms? Show me with hands up. Let's show each other, not just me. Show each other with hands. Yes. Be real. How was it? Oh, I got one of these. Thank you for being honest. Yes. Okay.
Not long enough.
Right. Remember that reminder I said in the beginning and then after the first breakout room? We are just scratching the surface. Continue these discussions. Get each other's contact information. I'm going to share my contact information at the end. All right. This conversation continues. It must continue. Okay. Next slide, please. Now our final section. Oh, next one after that. Our fourth goal. Maybe you might not completely feel empowered by the end of this session, but beginning to feel empowered to create work opportunities that pretty much uphold your values. right? We started off by identifying our core values, by defining what thriving looks like and how our career, the teaching artist career fits into that. And then we just did this whole section about promoting inclusivity, equity, inclusion, did I say exclusivity? No, inclusivity. Promoting all of that within our practice. Now let's look at creating work, right? Creating the work. Next slide, please. Yes, so this is something that I've learned through my journey. And I have been a freelance teaching artist. Now I'm an employee teaching artist. And throughout my whole journey, I discovered that in order to create work opportunities that are rewarding, gratifying, satisfying, all of that, I need to treat my teaching artist career like a business. So that's the hat that I put on. So what does that look like? Is there, let me see if, what if I had anything else that I wanted to show you? Nope, we can stop the screen share. Okay. So, you know, think about how you've been finding your teaching artist jobs. Okay, you don't have to write it in the chat, but just think about it. So I graduated from the Career Center at the Actors Fund's Teaching Artist Intensive. I graduated from that in 2017. And that was an incredible, oh, I forgot to say, by the way, there is a resource doc that we're gonna drop in the chat right now. I can't believe I forgot to reference it. So this resource doc, Keela just posted. In there are programs, websites, and services. All but 2 of them I have personally used and have been instrumental in me being able to create work, whereby today, you know, I went from being a teaching artist at, you know, different school, different organizations. There are different teaching, okay, here it is. Whew. Let me download all of this in like 2 minutes. You can apply directly with schools and districts. You can apply for organizations that hire teaching artists. So those organizations like Artworks LA, like You Think, okay, with the Zimmer's Museum, there are several others. They have the partnership, they have the contracts with the schools, they hire the teaching artists, and then you go in through that organization. I've done both. And then you can also be an employee, okay? So, in that resource doc, like I said, there are, you know, various things that I have used to increase my confidence, that have helped me empower myself. And I have to give a big shout out to the Teaching Artist Intensive. That's where I learned about VAPA standards and to speak the language of the people who are doing the hiring. Because a lot of things, okay, so I spoke with one of my mentors. Oh, by the way, another part of this document, I was going to say this earlier, but I forgot, so I don't forget again. Remember that slide with all of those different terms? You know, I got you started on defining a few of them, not all of them, but a few of them in the glossary section of this doc. And those definitions come from, you know, the work that I have done in DEI. Okay, so I want to share something with you from my mentor. It is about teaching artists seeing themselves as collaborators with, if you choose to go directly to the through the districts or through the schools, okay? It's about teaching artists putting on a hat as collaborator as opposed to someone who just comes and goes, okay? But like seeing how can you actually be a part of this organization instead of kind of like a gig worker. So something that my mentor has, one of my teaching artist mentors has said, and she actually, I have 2 mentors actually, and they work directly, you know, they give counsel to organizations, to school districts, that is. They're interested in creating partnerships and collaborations with teaching artists, having developed relationship development. If you're seen as a gig worker who just comes and goes, it's harder to feel a part of. So she, in her work, she's been encouraging the districts to invite teaching artists as guests to PD opportunities around the standards, around cultural relevancy. I share this with you so that you know, like, you're not just, you don't have to fight with the school in order to have your practice be, in order to like make them take you on. Instead, know that there are organizations that are open. Like why fight an uphill battle if you don't need to? Okay, so that's one thing. Another thing that she helped me see is that she's noticed that I'm reading my notes because there are some things that I want to make sure that I say. She noticed that a lot of teaching artists have these lesson plans and curriculum that they're passionate about teaching. However, they're coming in, but like this goes to the not being part of portion, right? So there's curricular alignment. So if teaching artists, if you see yourself as a collaborator, how can you actually find out what are the needs? What are the needs within the school, and how can you create a curriculum using your teaching artist practice to help the school fulfill their needs, to help the teacher fulfill their needs? And that's called arts integration. Okay. And so here's a specific example. There was this Bill of Rights project at a Pasadena school. I'm not gonna name specifics, but this is what she shared with me, because she observed this happening. A teacher was having a hard time getting the students in their class to pass the Bill of Rights. So this teaching artist built a curriculum for the kids using writing, using music. So this is exactly what they did. The kids rewrote the Bill of Rights in common language. They set it to music, they memorized it, they presented it, and they had the rest of the class guess which bill, right? So it's like a guessing game. Every child passed that unit test where the class was struggling before. The classroom teacher was floored. So if you see yourself as part of, right? So the next, what's the likelihood of that teacher coming back for another term, for ongoing terms, because they're developing a relationship, they're feeling the need. They're just not coming in saying, okay, y'all need arts, and I'm here to teach. No. Like, can you be part of? There's one other thing, and it's a term that I put in the resources doc called the LCAP. It stands for, I don't have it memorized, so I gotta pull it out myself. Here it is. It stands for Local Control and Accountability Plans. And it is an educational tool. Pretty much this is where the funding's at. Long story short, this is where the dollars is at. So if you know how to read the LCAPs, you can find out which districts, which schools have the monies, and who also need people to implement specific plans around the arts. If you know how to read that, you can see where the dollars are, and you can, get paid. And that's a big thing with the Teaching Artists Guild, is they are committed for artists, teaching artists, to be paid, to get paid, and to get paid well. And this is possible. I have used the Teaching Artists Guild's pay rate calculator to negotiate salaries, to negotiate pay rates that felt good to me. All right. We have a few minutes left. Is there any last bit I'll say? No, let's just open it. We're gonna close out this official conversation with, or formally close out soon. But before that, like, what's percolating for you regarding creating opportunities, or what's percolating? What's percolating for you? You feel free to raise your hand, type it in the chat. Let's see, I'm gonna scroll back up. Kelly, oh, Lauren, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I dropped a question in the chat, but I also have another question, but I guess I'll just ask this one I dropped in the chat, about AB5, if that's had a huge impact on the way teaching artists get paid.
I am unfamiliar with that, so I'm going to go to one of my co-hosts to see if you've got some insight that you can provide towards AB5. I'm unfamiliar.
AB5 is the state legislation that came out in 2020 that was driven by rideshare, Uber and Lyft drivers being treated as employees rather than consultants. So the impact is that if you're doing work where you have to be someplace at a certain time and you have a business card and you have a phone, like you're acting like an employee, you need to be paid like an employee. So I'm wondering if there are our colleagues that are program directors, which I think are here, or teaching artists, did your contracting change in the last year or so? Did you switch from an hourly rate to an employee or a part-time, from a consultant to a part-time employee?
Kellen, I see your hand. Oh, before you speak, just quickly, because I'm looking at the time, it is 4:30, so we are officially done, but I'm going to stay on for a few more minutes. But if you do have to leave, thank you for showing, thank you for coming. I'm going to drop my contact info in the chat, so before you leave, you know, if you want to reach out to me, go for it. Put my info in. But thank you if you do have to depart. Thank you for coming. Please keep these conversations going. Keep doing the introspective work. And, you know, hope to see you around another time. Okay, Kellen, go.
I am going to have to head off soon because I have to go to another meeting, but I did want to share that, yeah, for me, with the school districts that I was working with, as well as other organizations, there ended up being a lot of like creative funneling of money through a nonprofit who would actually pay me for a service that organization would then give that money to. And in the early days of AB5, and then later on, it turned into one of the school districts that I work with has basically brought me, created a job description and has brought me on in a as an employee that has just really flexible hours and still works on a case-by-case basis, but has created like a classification for that. So yeah, it's definitely changed things and made it so that now I'm straddling both sides of the fence in the sense of like some things I'm being considered an independent contractor and some things I am being brought on as an employee. But I think some of that speaks to the size of the organization and what they're able to do. So I hope that's helpful. And thank you so much for this space and time and conversation.
You got it. You're welcome. And thank you for sharing that, Kellen. I'm going to check in with Lauren. Lauren, was that helpful for you? And actually anybody else who, okay, great. All right. Megan Kirkpatrick, who's one of our co-hosts, she dropped a tool for learning about the LCAP through Create California, which I also referenced in the resources doc. So there's that. And also, Jillian did drop a feedback form in the chat if you'd like to, or if you would just take a moment to fill that out before you leave, or you know, at your leisure a little bit later. Technically we're done, but like I said, I can stay on for a little bit more. So what else is percolating for you, either on, you know, creating those career opportunities for yourself, or anything else that was discussed during today's session? Rebecca.
I also just wanted to quickly add to Lauren's question. I work at a nonprofit where we hire teaching artists, so we have that partnership with school districts and schools. So Lauren, one of the things that we've seen is we've actually had a really big influx of requests from a lot of different districts in schools because there's been an influx of some of this funding. They're now, you know, new schools we've never worked with that have said, hey, do you have a teaching artist? Could we do this? Could we do that? So we're in the midst of, you know, since it's proposal and budgeting season, sorting that out. So we're looking to hire, you know, a lot of teaching artists for the coming year is what we're planning. So that's been one of the effects that we've seen, is that now there are suddenly some schools that say, hey, we have some funding. We want to put it, you know, towards an art program in any way we can. So they've been reaching out to organizations. So I work for PS Arts, and we work with a lot of different districts around the LA area. So yeah, that's one of the things we've seen. Just want to add that. And we have our teaching artists are employees as opposed to contractors at PS Arts.
Thank you, Rebecca. Who else? Who else on this topic or anything else covered from today? Okay.
I will just add that inner city arts shifted. Before the pandemic, we had both. We had full-time teaching artists employees with all of the words that are associated with employees. And then we had a whole other group that served our out of school time programs. And most of those were contractors. And now we really do not work with contractors any longer. Anyone that becomes part of the inner city arts teaching artists, that for the most part becomes a part-time employee if we don't have a full-time position available. Now, this was just around the beginning of the pandemic. And if I'm honest too, it seems as though that it's more challenging for our organization to find teaching artists that are looking for what we are offering is in terms of employment. I'm not a hiring person, but that's just sort of like, wow. So I've noticed a change, and I'm eager to see how this will blossom and what the implications will be moving forward. I hope for everyone that it serves all the beautiful teaching artistry and learning. We'll see.
Thank you for that, Holly and Rebecca. So connections, contacts, get the info. Even though Holly is not the hiring person, she's still connected. So hey, soft leads, right? Soft referrals. I'm just saying. Okay, I'm gonna drop my info again in the chat. So here's the final prompt for today. You can write it in the chat or just unmute and start speaking. And that is, I'm leaving here with. What are you leaving here with? Another way of saying that is, this stood out to me the most from today's conversation. Let's anchor in our learnings here. Type it in the chat. I would love to hear these, actually. I would love to hear these out loud, or type them in the chat. Melania says, leaving here with to seek inclusion over equity or justice. Thank you for sharing. Holly, thank you for your comment. I appreciate that. Thank you, and you're welcome. Our pleasure. Megan, gratitude for the work and gifts of teaching artists. Thank you, thank you. And all right, so that's it. That's our session. Final call, y'all. Who wants to say one thing that they're leaving with verbally? One, twice, 3 times.
How to thrive.
Yes, leaving here how to thrive. Awesome. All right, thank you so much for just your time and your hearts and your attention and your commitment to your practice and to inclusivity and equity. And we're going to stop the recording soon. Have an amazing, amazing rest of your day and week.